Welcome to the Cards Central Postgame Show. The Cardinals a 4-1 win over the Pirates to split the series at 2 games apiece. Stefan, Caray, and Luke Slabaugh here for STL Sports Central. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. A slower developing game for St. Louis, but a good game nonetheless. A big win for them. They salvaged the series split against the Pirates, a team that they've struggled with a bunch here in 2025.
Right, and you're staring down the barrel of losing this series 3-1 to the Pirates, and a really well-pitched series by the Bucs. It was good to see Miles Mikolas go through a solid outing of 5 innings and 1 run allowed, and of course exploding there in the 7th, I think, was some of the better command of the strike zone that you've seen out of a Thomas Saggese or a Jordan Walker all year. There were some really encouraging things that I'm excited to get into with you, Stefan.
Yeah, I think we should start right there. You bring it up pretty early in the show and as well in the title. Jordan Walker, Thomas Saggese unload on the Bucs. Well, the Cardinals win the game 4-1, and that was thanks to a big bottom of the 7th, a 3-run 7th, where you got Mason Wynn aboard, and then guess what? Thomas Saggese rips a ball into the gap in right center, and Jordan Walker just leaned on a baseball 404 feet to left center field. Those are the types of swings you want to see from your young players in that spot.
And particularly given those 2 at-bats, Saggese having struggled with the fastball hitting just a tick over 200, him being able to hit that to the opposite field and driving a run. But also Jordan Walker, first home run this year on a non-fastball. He is also around 207 when it comes to that slider, sweeper, slurve type of pitch per Fangraphs. And so to be able to unload on that, hit it 404, I think was just incredible. Good for his confidence. Good to see that presence at the plate. Only his 5th home run this year. I know there were a lot of bones made a couple years ago about him not driving the ball as much. They wanted to see some more ISO power out of him. And so it's good to see Jordan Walker do this. You got 27 more of these slogs to go. So I like what I'm seeing right now. And then being able to actually pounce on these fastballs. What I liked about Saggese's at bat there is that he kind of mimics a bunt there, stabs at the ball late on that first pitch. And so that lets Yohan Ramirez kind of fall into this trap, kind of the mouse going after the cheese. He will go for that high fastball. It looks like Saggese was sitting dead red, able to pounce on that. And so it's good baseball. It was good, smart heads up baseball that fans have been clamoring for, that they deserve. Good win. And I mean, good rally there.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed in that inning especially was the timing of the hitters was on point for the Cardinals. Even with Joel Pozo's ground out up the middle, I mean, that ball was hit on a line. It was hit squarely through the hole. It was a nice play by the shortstop to recover there. But you see Thomas Saggese going to right center, kind of more towards center. You see Jordan Walker going to left center, more towards center. And then Lars Nootbaar seeing the opposite field. I love the timing that we saw from these young players that you would expect at least the majority of that group to be back in 2026. That's something that Brant Brown has really helped them with this year.
Yeah, you got to hit to all fields. And so a team like this, where I don't think there's one batter in particular that really stands out head and shoulders above everyone else. Obviously, Contreras got a good power stroke to him, but otherwise, uh, the game does not necessarily favor, pull hitters as much anymore. And it's not a 3 true outcomes league anymore. Like, you need someone who can spray the ball from gap to gap. We saw it out of Nootbaar, as you mentioned, which I think is absolutely great. Him having a good game, he has those 5 consecutive games with multiple hits, then struggling in an 0 for 20 and then able to go 3 for 4 today. It has been this roller coaster of emotions, I'm sure, but him back in the leadoff spot where he belongs. Really great stuff.
Certainly not a 3 true outcome team are the Cardinals. They are slugging at a very low rate in comparison to the rest of Major League Baseball, but starting to see that tick up a bit. They're going to need it with a really tough stretch of games coming up against the Reds when they go to the Great American Small Park, a very hitter-friendly park in the National League Central. Then you come back and you face the red-hot Athletics, who are 7-3 in their last 10. They just got done sweeping the Detroit Tigers, who coming into that series had the best record in the AL. Then you have the Giants, who are no slouches themselves, but have found themselves in a Cardinals-esque position in their wild card hunt.
Yeah, the Giants been beating up on the Cubs this week, and I know they're in progress right now, but the last couple of games, they've really stuck it to them. You mentioned the Athletics coming into town, the homeless Athletics or unhoused Athletics, soon to go to Vegas. Going to be a whole family affair for the Careys, but the big boppers as well taking on center stage with Nick Kurtz and Soderstrom and Rooker, um, some guys that were highly regarded when they were drafted and others that were, great waiver wire pickups. I mean, I remember Brent Rooker with the Kansas City Royals had a little bit of a power stroke, but had pretty much written him off. And so, yeah, it'll be fun times at Busch Stadium. You would wish that these games had more intrigue behind them, I guess. The big story this week, of course, Stefan, is the attendance or the lack thereof. We got, local outlets, local TV stations highlighting, the record low attendance at Cardinal games. And unless there is bold, decisive action and the narrative and everyone getting on one page here, these next two homestands in particular, it could be rough. So obviously got to embrace the members of the core who are going to stick around in St. Louis. Hope the next couple of times that Miles Michaelis takes the bump at Busch that he has a consistent outing like he did today. Kind of had some jams there he had to work out of, and it wasn't necessarily an efficient outing. But to be able to end the season on the right foot, this final month, 27 more games to go, just hope that they finish strong and that they have more clarity of the pieces that they want when they go up against some top tier competition. And I mean, the Reds are no slouch. Of course, they're pursuing a playoff spot of their own. They'll be at Busch. The Brewers will be at Busch for that final homestand. So there's a lot to look forward to, and hopefully you get to see kind of the wheat separate from the chaff there.
Great point. And in the immediate future, we know a lot of the fans here are going to be focused on Mizzou playing football tonight against Central Arkansas, I believe, is who they're matched up against. That's going to be a not so big matchup, but we'll see who ends up being the starting quarterback in Mizzou. Now, let's talk about the Cincinnati Reds. Tomorrow, it's Matthew Liberatore versus Zach Littell. The Reds are 2 games above 500. They are still kind of scratching and clawing their way for that third wild card spot, which is currently occupied by the New York Mets. They're a good team. They're a team that I think has all the pieces to be very good for a long time. But the key to their success has been their pitching, not necessarily their offense, which is what has powered them in the past. Their young pitching, Andrew Abbott being a name that comes to mind. They have found a way to be really, really talented here in 2025.
Right. And they looked for pitching help even at the deadline. The guy that they got going tomorrow, Littell, you mentioned, he came over from the organization where Libby started out at. In Tampa Bay, and very hittable guy, up and down year, ERA in the mid threes, but close to 30 long balls given up. So this is a very hittable pitcher, and I think, yeah, a good opportunity for the Cardinals bats to expand on what just happened. If Jordan Walker is able to to hit the ball kind of left center field or use a little bit more of the field, I think that's great. Thomas Saggese as well, as we mentioned. So it's a good opportunity. A good Friday night there at the small park, as you mentioned. I haven't been there since 2010, but it's great. The Reds, certainly emphasize the pitching. They've got some intriguing hitters, but Ellie De La Cruz, of course, being the standout guy there. It should be fun. I look forward to it.
Yeah, one of their big pickups, Miguel Andujar from the Athletics, has really popped off for them since the trade deadline and stabilized that middle of the order for Cincinnati. And that's a team that has kind of played the Cardinals to a close record in the team's histories. They have played each other quite a bit. They've gone through their highs and their lows. You remember the Big Red Machine. Of course, the Cardinals have been one of the most successful franchises in baseball. Tons of history will be on display when these two teams match up this weekend. Now, the Reds, 4.5 games back of that third wild card spot against the Mets. You're not necessarily out of it, but it's going to be difficult to overcome that deficit with 27 games left to play.
Yeah, my general rule of thumb was at the trade deadline or at the start of September, if you are over under 5.5 games back, that generally decides your fate. I know that there are exceptions. There are teams that have gone on amazing September tears throughout this long history of the game, Stefan. For the Cardinals, the probability is very low. And so the last week or so, I haven't even made the attempt to mention it because Aaron Dodson in the comment section is going to come after me, as he well should. So the best thing you can do is the Cardinals. I mean, 7 games out right now as of this moment. Giants, Diamondbacks, treading water as well. The Reds are really the contender there, with the Mets holding on to that last wild card spot right now. So yeah, you look to play spoiler, but also you look to build towards 2026. It ain't happening this year, it seems. So trying to gain some clarity of who you keep in 2026 when Heimblum takes over full-time as president of baseball operations. Our guy, Bernie Miklasz, here on the channel. By the way, you should subscribe. Daily Cardinals content. Daily Randy Carricker show, sometimes with Brooke Grimsley, sometimes with Matt Rocchio, sometimes with the guy we pull from Quick Trip. It's cool. It's great stuff here on the channel. But if this is year one of the rebuild, it kind of came in a milquetoast manner. You go out, you get Phil Maton, but you don't make a splash and you don't dismantle the roster one way or another. So really not a whole lot of momentum going into this year. What I would hope for 2026 is that you've identified the guys that you want to keep and the guys that you could probably get some value from on the trade market over the offseason. There's a team poised to contend and wants to give you a nice little gem for a Wilson Contreras or Sonny Gray going into a contract here. Like that's where I think the focus should be. And I think that's where Cardinals fans are right now. It hasn't been good enough this year. Of course, being 4 games under 500, the standard is the standard, and the tradition in St. Louis is that. Like, you are looking forward to October and making a deep run into October every year if you're a Cardinals fan. So it ain't here this year. How the roster and management is constructed moving forward is a completely different conversation. The silo of this game, you saw some great things in a 4-1 win, but obviously it hasn't been good enough in a large enough sample size. So play spoiler, hope some guys go on a tear. All these guys, the effort has been there all year, and players don't tank. That's an organizational thing. So when it comes to guys where, Alec Burleson OPSing 800 or Lars Nootbaar trying to once again get on a consistent streak to end the year, you want to identify the guys moving forward and then see how you can improve for 2026 and hopefully turn this thing around in a span of a couple years where you make the late 2020s and early 2030s the decade of the Cardinals.
Very, very well put. The Cardinals trying to return back to greater form. Quick pause here as we remind you that all content is provided by DraftKings, and nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 available right here in Missouri, and you don't want to miss out on all the fun. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, welcome back to the Cards Central Postgame show here on STL Sports Central. Luke Slabaugh, Stefan, Caray talking about the Pirates series, the Reds series, and more, with plenty on the horizon for the Cardinals as they hit the road and then come back for a homestand of importance if they want any chance of maybe grabbing that final wild card spot. Yes, I think a lot of us have maybe turned the page on that idea, but I want to go back to a point you made earlier, gaining familiarity with your players and figuring out who's going to be part of your core in 2026. This Red Series is important because you want to gain familiarity with them. Another young team that probably won't be changing a ton in 2026. If you could beat them here in 2025, there's got to be a lot of confidence heading into next season when you see them as much as you will.
Right. Gaining familiarity with that type of team that has some young, intriguing players. Obviously, De La Cruz is the headliner there. But I remember back in Tulsa, and you were in Amarillo, like Gavin Lux coming up with the Dodgers was a really good sight to behold. An infielder back then, now playing more left field. That guy from Oklahoma State, Encarnacion Strand, not up with the team right now, but probably a September type of call-up or deal if he is available. And so, they don't have one guy in particular who really stands out there in that order. The pitching has been the calling card. It's been interesting what's going on there in Cincinnati, and being able to gain some familiarity with them, perhaps play some spoiler. There's not a whole lot of, I don't know how to put this. There's not a supercharged narrative behind this game other than the Reds have the upper hand right now. They're the ones third in the division. They're, on a 3-game skid right now. Like, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps if they want to get back in on this thing. So you might be pouncing on them at the right time. Who's to say?
Yeah, certainly. In my time in the Texas League, they had a lot of players that were traded over from different organizations to the Reds, the one that jumps out to me is Spencer Steer. When he was in the Twins organization, he was one of the top prospects for the Twins. He was dealt over there. And of course, like you mentioned, Christian Encarnacion Strand made his debut and then kind of got injured and was, struggling through the system. They have guys like Noel V. Marte. They're a really young, exciting group. And of course, you can't forget about Ellie De La Cruz. That's the big difference, is they have slug, they have defensive versatility at every position, and they have solid young pitching. I think that's the biggest difference between the Cardinals and the Reds as things currently stand. And we'll see kind of how that shakes out, because the Reds have everything to play for and the Cardinals don't have a whole lot to play for. And there's nothing scarier than a team with nothing to lose.
Right. Nothing to lose. And Cincinnati has been starved for a winner, a consistent winner, for a long time. They've had the longest playoff series win drought streak in baseball, or at least, for the teams that have made it that far, at least I think it's the 1990s, the last time they won a playoff streak or a playoff series. So yeah, this team's been starved for a long time. And you mentioned that pitching's at a premium in this game. I think the Cardinals are in a pretty dicey position in that not terrible. They're certainly competing and they are fielding a roster with some intriguing guys, but they're not amazing either. That we've had a conversation, at least the last few times I've done the show, is like, who is the best player on the Cardinals? Like, position wise, in terms of WAR, you would think Mason Wynn, like wins above replacement. That's Wynn. Usually his glove puts him up there. Contreras hits well. Sonny Gray has had some good outings that have him as a high three WAR pitcher. And I'm not like obsessed with wins above replacement as a stat. I'm just giving you the baseline here. When it comes to pitching, this team doesn't have a lot of cavalry coming outside of Quinn Matthews right now in terms of guys who are in the top level of the minors who have intriguing stuff. Like, the Cardinals need to build up some more of those arms, so when it does come time to compete consistently, you've got those guys on call. And I think it starts with navigating the trade market and the free agent market. And we know the DeWitts haven't shelled out a ton of money when it comes to pitchers. Sonny Gray had a nice deal there, but if you want to get a top of the rotation starter who's in his prime that will help you for years to come, you got to monitor those two markets, and not just monitor them, but dominate them. And so credit to the Reds for developing their own guys, making the trades when they need to, and now have a decent roster, one that is primed to get one of those wild card spots if things spin their way.
Yeah, I think the big difference is for the Cardinals, I don't think the approach is going to be signing another Sonny Gray type. I think the approach will be trading from your current roster in order to get a young, controllable starter. And that's the important thing, is you want to see that sort of roster flexibility, that financial flexibility with a guy like Chaim Bloom, who's been known to develop through the minor league system. I don't expect them to go out and get a Sonny Gray type. I don't expect them to go and get a Dylan Cease type, unless you're going to trade for someone of that ilk that you have 4 or 5 years of control for. Why not get rid of one of your depth pieces on the major league roster and maybe some of the guys in the minors that you're not sure about to go get one of those arms? And I think that's sort of one of the things that has been talked about plenty. And another question mark is this. Andre Palante, we talked about it the other night, Brendan Schaefer and I. No roster move made officially. Nothing has been set in stone, but it certainly felt like after that press conference that things were trending in a direction where he wasn't necessarily going to be making his next start. Who do you pull up? Who is a guy that can fill that role? Because as it sits right now, I could kind of confidently say that your best 3 starters are Sonny Gray, Matthew Liberatore, and then Michael McGreevy, not necessarily in that order. And then Miles Mikolas is kind of sneaking into that group. He hasn't pitched as poorly as we saw a few weeks ago. He's keeping them in the game over his last few outings.
Yeah, and for Mikolas, that's the name of the game. You all go your separate ways at the end of this year. You thank him for giving his all, for being a good teammate, for pitching into his age 37 year. And you hope that he can string together a couple of these outings where you go 5, 6 innings, pitch efficiently. Ultimately just eat innings. And I know the knocks on him have been validated. Like, that start in Tampa it was gross. And so I get where Cardinal fans are at with Miles. I just, for the overall body of work, just, put this one in the rear view after the season. So yeah, Liberatore is intriguing as a mid-rotation option. I think with the control that you have on him, for sure, have him in the plans for 2026 in the fold. You mentioned Gray, contract year coming up. That's one that it comes down to the value. If you get him for something over the offseason, or maybe there's a trade deadline or someone who's willing to overpay there at the deadline. And then McGreevy, yeah, kind of the sinker baller who sometimes will give up some hard contact. And that's where we're at with Andre Palante right now. A really good kid. And like there were some times early this season when he came out, cold weather, came out looking like a 2 or a 3. And now, as more innings have been logged and more film is on him, you've seen teams start to square him up pretty badly. So perhaps there's a chance. I mean, early on in his career, Palante was able to profile some of that stuff well out of the bullpen. It's going to be musical chairs with the bullpen next season and maybe the year afterwards as you try to find the right guys to put in the right places. That's another thing that I would say stood out to me today was Kyle Leahy, Jojo Romero, and Riley O'Brien, but all making quick work of the Pirates. You're going from the 4th inning through the 8th inning. You didn't give up any hits. Sometimes some shoddy fastball command here and there, a couple of walks given up, but those guys looked pristine.
Yeah, they've looked great. And again, to your point, having bullpen depth is going to be essential for the Cardinals because that's going to be one of the positive facets of this team in 2026. Most teams, they carry a big bullpen that they can shuffle the deck with. The Cardinals have been kind of limited to the same guys, so we'll see how that is changed in next year's campaign. Now, the final point I want to ask you about, Matthew Liberatore tomorrow. Longevity's been a big question for him, getting deeper into games. This is by far the most amount of innings he's pitched in a major league season. How concerned are you about not only the hitter friendliness of the park, but his ability to go long in tomorrow's game?
I'm very concerned, Stefan. I like Matthew Liberatore. I think he still has some intrigue, like that we haven't really gotten the full experience of what he can be. If he can be a solid 3 for this team for a few years, that would be fantastic. But he hasn't gone 6 innings since his last start in June, the 29th. So consistency is going to be the name of the game here. You need length out of him. You've seen the velocity dip in the fastball. And so for a guy who's under control through 2029, like there's a lot to work on, but so much runway to give him. Obviously, if they start, beating the brakes off of him, you got to rethink things. But we've seen there was that 3-start stretch in May where you really thought that the light was coming on there internally. And so I'm not entirely sold yet, but I think that there is still a lot of potential to see out of him in this series. And if he can stick it to the Reds, I mean, we'll be better for it.
Well, I think that's expert analysis, Luke. It was a pleasure working with you for the first time. I hope we do it many more times in the future. The Cardinals win today 4-1. For everyone here at STL Sports Central, all content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Luke Slabaugh, I'm Stefan Caray. Cardinals versus Reds tomorrow. That'll be the opening of a big road trip for St. Louis. They need to get a series win if they can find one.